So hello and welcome to today's video. Now over the past year or so, some gaming outlets, namely IGN, have been promoting this game called Agefield High as some kind of spiritual pseudo-sequel to Bully, because we've got nearly 20 years without an official sequel to that. We're probably going to wait at least another 5-6 years or whatever for the next Rockstar game anyway. And there's a lot of people out there who want more games like Bully, and we haven't really got any in that genre. Now Agefield High has finally released, and is it anything like Bully? No. Check descriptions for timestamps. So to start off the review, I'm going to talk about the game's plot, because I'm one of those people who believes the story is the most vital part of a game like this. And even though many people do compare this game to Bully, and rightfully so, there is another thing which I think is a bit more comparable here. Because Agefield High marketed itself on being like those raunchy mid-90s to late 2000s teen movies. Stuff like, say, American Pie, Road Trip, Superbad, those kind of films basically. Where the plots usually involves the teenage losers looking to get laid somehow, and partying may or may not have a role in them. And as you can probably guess from that, yes, that is pretty much the story to Agefield High. The plot is pretty much Sam and his new friends wanting to throw a killer party. It's not really about Sam taking over the school or dealing with rivalries like we see with, say, Ernest Jones and the Jocks, or Johnny Vincent's relationship issues. So because of that, we can't really compare it to Bully here, but we can compare it to other films in the genre. Now the teen comedy genre is never meant to be thought of as philosophical or deep. The entire genre is pretty much turn your brain off, de-stress, enjoy the film and have a good laugh. And the stories we see in these films are pretty much it really. But it typically does rely on themes such as coming of age, real life experiences, friendship and relationships. Now if we take a look at, say, Superbad as an example, it worked really well for multiple reasons. The plot was engaging, the cast bounced off each other really well, even if there was friction between the actors. But it worked because it made the characters feel more realistic when Seth snaps at McLovin. And the script and many of the characters in Superbad were very heavily inspired by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg's teen years, so the film has that very personal touch to it, characters and events from the experiences of the creators. Same goes for even Bully in this case. Many of Bully's NPCs and even parts of the story were inspired by many of the developers' high school years. Now the reason I bring that up is because Agefield High lacks every single thing about what I just said. The plot feels extremely generic even by genre standards. It's like whoever came up with this game just sat down one night and thought, you know what, I want to make a game like this, without actually grasping what made the genre appealing to begin with, let alone how to convert a storyline like this into a game. The writing is extremely cookie cutter, very rushed, and dare I say, pandering in some cases. It straight up feels like whoever did the writing on this just noted down every single cliche on the checklist. It genuinely feels like there is no personal touch to this whatsoever. Now one benefit of playing games over watching films is you often get more breathing room to expand on characters and the plot because you're not really confined to a runtime. But despite that, a lot of the writing here does feel extremely rushed, and it shows it extremely early on. But to give you an idea of how rushed and nonsensical this game is, the game begins with Sam supposedly starting new school after moving into a new town. Yet the second mission, which is about 10 minutes in, he's dared by Kale, who is known for about 5 minutes to steal Ashley, the head cheerleader's underwear. And somehow, despite the fact Sam started the school about 2 hours ago, he magically knows where Ashley lives and exactly where her bedroom is. Now the characters in this are all awful. I'm sorry, but there wasn't a single character in this that I thought was even remotely interesting or memorable. Like, I haven't watched anything relating to American Pie since about 2010 or so. Yet, I can still remember Stifler. I can still remember that one girl, Michelle, whose recurring gag was her saying this one time at band camp, and I haven't even seen these films for like 16 years. Yet for some reason, I can remember this extremely well. If you were to ask me, even probably about 2 hours of this video going live, anything I would remember about the characters, I'd be like, no. So what about the protagonist? You've got to have a good protagonist. Like, off the top of my head, I can think of, say, Alex Mason from Black Ops, Max Caulfield from Life is Strange, Nico Bellic from GTA 4, Frank West from Dead Rising. Every single one of those characters, I can name something about their backstories, their personalities and so on. But I legitimately cannot tell you anything about the main character Sam. You know, I'm going to save time. It's the same for each and every one of these people. Every single one of these characters comes off as weirdly fake and robotic. There is just no emotion shown with them at all. It's like the residents of Agefield are androids trying to be human. There's more expression and humanity in greeting one of the adults in Bully who has no role in the game than there are with the main cast of this. It's like whoever wrote these characters just sat down and wrote the most cliche thing they could actually imagine about each and every one of the characters. Oh look, we have a jock who happens to be very violent and a bully. Oh look, we have the head cheerleader whose entire personality is she's a bitch. It's just so cliche. Like I say, if you go back and compare the cast of like say American Pie, Superbad or even Bully, you'll notice that the cast work really well because there's some depth to them. But the point is, the characters are there and they actually feel a bit real. In fact, to give you an idea, right, Bully has such a memorable cast of characters that just ooze with personalities that make all of them feel real, or at the very least remind you of somebody you probably know in real life. Even straight down to the most irrelevant characters in the game. Let's take Casey Harris, who's a jock. Now Casey has absolutely no role in the story, he just appears as an enemy in a couple of missions. But yet, in free mode, if you stand around him, you'll know that he regularly breaks into the girls' dorm, specifically the laundry room. He's a bit dim-witted because he struggles a lot with art and English and fails them often. His father is an alcoholic, and Casey takes steroids. That's not even all of the background for this character. But that is just a molecule of the lore we get for a minor background character in Bully who has no role in the story. We don't even get an ounce of that for the main protagonist of this game. Now, again, I'm not expecting this kind of stuff to be done to NPCs, especially for an indie studio. But, like I say, the character Sam is just so dull and devoid of any personality, he's just boring. Now as said, chemistry is extremely important to developing good character dynamics. But there is no chemistry to be had with Sam or the other two idiots. They all feel like they really don't want to be around each other. You know that kind of awkwardness you get when you're talking to somebody and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I want to get out of here? I got that feeling a lot from every single cutscene. Another thing is, typically with this genre, it's usually way more film heavy than gaming. And as I said a bit earlier, one of the benefits of playing games over watching films is you don't get confined to a runtime, so you can properly expand the plot and introduce characters and whatever. And usually, when you get to introduce your characters, it's all about understanding character dynamics, so we get an idea of how characters are going to interact with each other, the sense of humour, the chemistry and whatever. But we do not get that here at all. The very first 20 minutes can be summed up like this. Sam turns up on his first day, Kale walks him to the cafeteria, and the dialogue is so crap and generic it doesn't really set up any dynamics between them. Now let's compare that to Bully. So in the first mission of Bully alone, we get introduced to Jimmy, and we know he's miserable and quite pent up. We get introduced to our antagonists for the chapter, who are the bullies, and they are targeting Jimmy because he's new. We meet Gary Smith as we enter the boys' dorm, and we get this slightly ominous vibe off him, with the way he speaks to Jimmy and the way he tries to humiliate Pete in front of Jimmy. And speaking of Pete, even though he has about, 4 or 5 lines in this one scene alone, we can tell he's friendly, very shy, and anxious. The very first mission of Bully tells us all we need to know about Jimmy, Pete and Gary's personalities and the dynamics of the trio on how they're going to interact with each other. And of course, as the next mission happens, it slowly progresses into the chapter 1 plot, with the bullies targeting Jimmy in the third mission, and the rest of the chapter is how Jimmy retaliates to them. Now the character models in this are just something else entirely. They are genuinely off-putting. They are just completely expressionless, barely blink and have a soul-piercing stare. Their eyes don't even move an inch either. I wish I wasn't exaggerating when I say these things actually do scare me a bit. Like, I really do get that uncanny valley vibe from them. They just really creep me out. I don't even know how to explain it, but yeah, they are creepy. And also, none of the character models really make any sense. Like, people have pointed out that many of the main cast, even though they're supposed to be 15 or 16 year olds, they look like they could pass for about late 20s, maybe even early 30s in some cases. In fact, this woman is supposed to be elderly. And you can tell that looking from the body model, but it's like they stuck this pristine makeup filled face that looks about 35ish on a character who's supposed to be in her 70s. Like, she talks about the young don't have any respect for the elderly and whatnot, but it just does not match up. You can probably go for a walk outside and probably see loads of 20-something women with that kind of makeup on already. As said, it's all just really uncanny, it's creepy. I also want to mention this a little bit because on the page it mentions that it references music, movies and fashion. Now, I am not an expert in fashion, especially women's fashion. But looking at 2000s fashion images, no one in this game is really dressed like it's the 2000s. Like, let's take a look at, say, Ashley. this is not 2000s fashion, is it? Like, women's fashion in the early 2000s was like, what, denim and vests? Or tank tops, whatever the hell they called them. And as for the men, well, Seth is dressed like the stereotypical jock. You know, very cliche. But even men's fashion was seemingly a bit more baggy than what we see with the cast here. It's like they just slapped on some default assets and called it a day. So now time for the buddy comparisons. And of course, part of that, well, pretty much all of that actually, is to do with the combat. And I was not expecting anything like Yakuza, or Tekken, or the Warriors with this. But the combat still let me down by a lot. Right, now we're going to get into the really good stuff, but it's the blocking. The blocking is just really buggy as all... yeah. Because even if your back is turned, and you're blocking, which is, you know, trying to block your face from getting punched in, and you get punched in the back of the head, you still somehow block this. Secondly, if you punch or kick, the block auto breaks, meaning you have to let go and re-hold the right button again for every single thing you do. You also have no grabs or grapples, which is an absolute staple of the fighting game genre. It's one of the very few things you can say Buddy and Super Smash Bros. Have in common. But you can't do that here. You genuinely cannot muster up any combos either, which are arguably a very satisfying part of any beat 'em up. All you can do is just punch and kick, punch and kick, punch and kick with any variety whatsoever. Wait, my mistake, you can push people, but that just kind of breaks their block. There are genuinely no tactics to this other than keep hammering the buttons. So let's quickly compare this with Bully. Now, Bully is not a tactical fighter. In fact, many people do often regard Bully's combat as incredibly easy. But, in Bully, let's say you're fighting Biff, right? The game refuses to let you grapple him because Biff is bigger than Jimmy. And also, Biff has a high rate of blocking because he's a boxer. So, when you're fighting someone like Biff, you need to utilise moves that can break blocks, or stun him somehow. This can be done like, say, pelting him with eggs, or using an uppercut to force break a block, and then get an open chance from there. Then you can use the moves you learn from the hobo to take Biff down because the ones from Jim are useless. Is it as tactical as something like, say, I don't know, Counter-Strike or Super Smash Bros? Absolutely not. Crap comparison, but you get the idea, those games are highly tactical. Buddy may not be the most advanced fighting game out there, but you still need to adapt your playstyle depending on who you're fighting. Again, here, you don't do anything like that. If they're blocking, you can push them, then just punch and kick, rinse and repeat, punch and kick. And the same goes for every single enemy in this game. None of them use any unique fighting styles. Again, in Bully, part of the charm was the varied styles you saw throughout the game. You had the nerds who were pathetically weak up close, but were considerably dangerous ranged because they used weapons like firecrackers and spud guns, which can easily make quick work of you. Then you have the preppies, who, while they don't use firecrackers or stink bombs or spud guns, they do utilise boxing in their style and prefer more up close and personal combat, which makes taking on waves of them a genuine hassle for newer players. A little bit off topic here as well actually, but the game also gives you the wrong controls. Nothing to do with fighting this part, but in the mission where you have to go and break into Ashley's house, the game tells you it's left stick to, crouch, but it's the right stick. And that to me shows how little this game was actually tested. Something like that should be easily picked up during testing, like, yeah, maybe that's the wrong button, then you just put in, like, say, the correct PNG or whatever the hell. But the fact something like that is missed in the second mission of the game, that to me says the game really was not tested at all. And also, the game seems to lack any real punishments for losing. Again, in GTA or Bully, if you get busted, you lose all your weapons, which is a fair punishment. You fought the law, and the law won. But you don't get any kind of punishment here. I got busted by the police, and I just got transported straight home. Now in school, I also assaulted a teacher by running into the staff room and kicking him. No repercussions either. And I did that multiple times. In Bully, not only do you lose your weapons, you also get punished with a detention minigame, which is genuinely boring if you get busted enough times. Like, it's a deterrent to make sure you don't get caught. Now, I know there are some similar games out there like the Warriors and Yakuza which don't really give you any punishments either, except a game over. But, people compare this game to Bully, it's advertised as an open world, so there really should be some kind of punishments for when you get knocked out or busted or whatever. And yeah, I know someone's going to bring up Mr. Shakedown from Yakuza 0, but I'm not talking about that. Actually, on the topic of that, you know how in Buddy and Yakuza you can get chased, often by enemies or authority figures in Buddy's case. And if you run away, they'll just give up after a while. Well, the chases here carry on forever. NPCs move at the same speed you do, and also never run out of stamina. You genuinely cannot start fights and run off. The only way to lose them is to jump over a wall and wait for the AI to run around the long way. That's the only way you can lose enemies in this, and I wish I was joking. Now the map, let's just say it's big, which is good, but it's empty and bland, which is bad. Traversing the map by foot is a slog and a half. You can ride bikes, and you get a free one for beating like the 4th mission of the game, but even then bikes very rarely spawn in the map itself. It's just really dull just exploring this map. There's no events happening, there's no fights, there's no events of interest. It's kind of like just GTA 3, but with less NPCs. Now in my opinion as well, the map really does lack any real areas of note. Like, I could not find a single area in this map that I thought was remotely interesting either. Now the game claims there's multiple things to do, but aside from classes and buying snacks, I couldn't find anything to do in this at all. I'm not sure if I got far enough in the game or not to unlock this kind of stuff, and to be honest, I really just do not care. It's boring. There's like a weird Guitar Hero minigame that I found in Sam's garage, which even fails to grasp how Guitar Hero is played. Like, yes, on paper it's the same, you tap the buttons as they go through the line, but the minigame itself does not match up with the rhythm, which is how Guitar Hero itself is played. Like, if you play Guitar Hero, or the one with the drums, or the DJ Hero set, whatever, you know, you kind of have the rhythm that you have to match, but it doesn't do that here either. Now I'm far from a Guitar Hero player, and I'm really shit at this, but even this annoyed the living shit out of me. Overall, I've talked way too much about this fucking game. It is just crap. Basically, to sum it up, Agefield High is to Buddy what Saints Row 2022 was to Saints Row 2. It's just really, really boring crap, devoid of any kind of personality. And the thing that's going to really set you off as well is they have a £25 price tag for this. 25 quid? Fucking daylight robbery.